If you haven't already got a question, as I said, do feel free to put your hand up in the next 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, half an hour or so, and indicate you'd like to put a question. If you do put a question, you will be entitled and invited to have one response when the panel have responded to your question, which seems reasonable. And then we'll open up for a short debate. If anybody's got a question after that, then they can come forward and just put your 2 pence worth in, really. Okay, let's go to the first question then, and it's been asked by 2 people, Steve and Kathy. So, Steve or Kathy, would you like to put the question, because it's the identical question? Steve. And it was to do with the possible amalgamation. Kathy.
Can I just ask, what's your opinion of the proposal to amalgamate the police service and the fire service?
The question was the amalgamation possibility of the police and fire service. We'll start with Jason on that one and then work through the panel.
Thank you. My view is there are many advantages for bringing the two together. I think you have to accept that operationally they're very different. That the police and the fire service do all work in an autonomous way, but actually they work very, very closely together as well. There are many, many opportunities there to push for further efficiencies, which then in turn put more frontline policing, more frontline officers where they need to be. And the best way to do that is to amalgamate the headquarters for a start. You've got a fire headquarters at Hinchinbrook right next door to another building, which is the police headquarters. You get the economies of scale. You get the back office savings through that. That's what local government is doing a lot of the time at the moment. I'm working with South Cambridgeshire District Council at the moment and Cambridge City in terms of shared service, which is of course a Labour council as well, so across party boundaries as well, in order for us to save money. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. I think it's important that we don't muddy the operation, but there are great opportunities. I was at Linton the other day where the police station is closed, but the police have moved into the office of the fire station. Now, it's that sort of collaboration that means that you have that on the ground, most important, heart of the community, policing and fire service that we need.
Thank you very much. Moving on, David.
Thanks very much. Well, you might expect me to say that was a great idea, but I think it's a really bad idea. A really, really bad idea. It sounds to me like empire building. The Police and Crime Commissioner's job is enough on its own. It's a big enough job to do. The police have a reputation to keep. The fire service have a reputation to keep. But the fire service have a purely positive reputation. The public see them as their friend. The police are the arm of the state, and we mustn't forget that. And they exert that arm. And to try and muddy the waters and bring the two any closer is extremely difficult. Of course you can share a police station, you can share a fire station. Of course you can do that. Operationally, I know, because I've done it, you cooperate. The police officers and the fire service cooperate. They don't need a political person at the top of them interfering with all that. This is not a good idea. The positive image that the fire service has is because they go out and help people. They have lots to show them, teach the police. They can teach them about community engagement. They can help them to do that a lot better. In fact, I can really do that. I can help the police with community engagement. But to join the two together, to make a czar in charge of both, that just would not work. It would muddy the waters. It would become involved. People would start to talk about police officers on fire engines, fire officers in police cars. That isn't how our society has been run in the past, and I don't see any advantage for it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, clearly the current government is pushing on with this. They're putting through Parliament at the moment a duty to collaborate. However, there is an element of choice amongst local communities, amongst your councillors, to work on whether or not that should be full-on merging back to just simply sharing some facilities or even just sharing some practice. One thing that often gets confused, sharing services does not mean co-location. You do not need to be in the same building to share a service. In big business, we do this all the time. You have different parts of the organisation spread around the world. You don't have to have everybody in the same building. Cambridgeshire Fire Service are moving to a new headquarters behind the Marriott in Huntingdon. It is probably too late to change that without wasting an awful lot of money that is ill-affordable. At the same time, as David said, they are different services. They do have blue flashing lights on their vehicles, but that's as similar as it gets. The approach is different. One is very reactive most of the time. These days, the fire service is quite a lot of proactive activity. There's a thing called this integrated risk management plan, where the fire brigade, the fire service, work very hard to make sure fires don't start in the first place. The days when all they did was running to burning buildings, bringing people out, has thankfully gone. They still have to do that on occasion, and we're very grateful they do. But not having the building catch fire, great. Not having people trapped in it, great too. Let's focus on avoiding those sorts of things. So the fire service can teach the police some stuff about reducing harm before it occurs, but it doesn't mean they should work together in an enforced way, driven politically. At the same time, Norfolk do some useful things. The integrated risk management team there are used to assess the performance of the police as a fresh pair of eyes.
Are you for or against it, though? I didn't say either.
It won't be the choice of the PCC, but I'm against the general principle that you force public services together. It just doesn't work when they're so different.
Okay, and finally, the second. Nick.
Cathy, thank you for the question. I've got some great concerns about this as well. I've got some great concerns because there's a lot of change being forced upon local authorities at the moment by central government. On one hand, the Home Office is saying that Cambridgeshire Constabulary needs to collaborate formally with Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire. In the same breath, it's saying it needs to look at devolution with Norfolk and Suffolk. And then superimposed upon all this, there's this bright idea just come out saying that the PCC should assume responsibility, potentially, for the fire service. Now, if amalgamation of any local authority or sharing of services of any local authorities makes sense, then we should support it. At the moment, the fire authority is looked after in terms of governance by the fire authority. A bunch of people appointed from the county council. It has no democratic accountability whatsoever. So I think that needs questioning. The biggest issue we've got, when we talk about the force control rooms of the police, is that they're being considered to have to be shared with Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire at the moment. And if you were to bring that together with the fire, it's starting to look really disjointed. So my take on this would be, I don't believe legislation will be enacted for at least 12 months. I think we should settle down and deal with some of the bigger issues first of all. This certainly wouldn't be a top priority, and I'd have to be convinced that it made sense for the people of Cambridgeshire, and I'd go out and consult before taking any decisions on this issue.
So, Cathy, Steve, you both asked a question. Either of you like to come back on anything on that, or were you happy with the
I was
answers?
glad that 3 out of the 4 members think it was a good idea, and I was particularly taken what they said about the difference in the way that the public perceive these two services, and I hope they forever stay separate. Thank you.
Okay, Steve. Okay, let's move on. Next question is Colin. The question from Colin is, what are the panel's views on insults towards an ethnic minority group by one of the candidates? Okay, I'll leave the candidates to interpret that question because it's your question, Colin. I'll repeat it. What are the panel's views on insults towards an ethnic minority group by one of the candidates? Dave.
Thanks, that brings the debate alive a little bit, doesn't it?
Hello. Right, yeah, that brings the debate alive a little bit. I'm not going to get into that mudslinging, I'm sorry. What I'll say is this. I've spent my whole life believing in equality. I've spent my whole life trying to support people that are different to me, people that are less fortunate to me, and that's how I've spent my life. I am currently an expert on the employment of minorities and women into emergency services, which are generally seen as all male. I and internationally used to encourage that sort of cooperation, to change a service that just looks like me. I've worked hard to support minority groups. I've worked hard to support people who are disadvantaged. So my answer to you is this. I'm not going to get involved in the muckraking. If somebody wants to use that sort of language, then that's up to them. But you won't find me saying things like that. And I'm sorry for not directly answering the question, but I'm telling you why.
Okay, Rupert, your interpretation on that question.
Yes, one of the key things and one of the roles that's not talked about much for the PCC is the so-called equality duty. It is one of the few things the PCC must do is to ensure that the police service works in a way that is equal, fair, and deals with all sides of the community fairly, effectively. I think it would be hard to fulfil that duty given what's been said recently, quite a while ago now. Similarly, I think it shows an error of judgment that is not recoverable from. I found what I saw on Facebook very shocking. If I'd been an employer, that person would not work for me anymore.
Okay, let's go to Nick.
Yeah, thank you. I'm guessing people might think it came from me, but I can assure you it hasn't, so let's be clear about that. When I was at the County Council, I championed the minority groups that just didn't have a voice, and I'm a great believer that if you don't give respect, you can't get it back. So we should treat people equally before the law. We should treat people equally by all local authorities, and those that struggle the most need the greatest help. They certainly don't labelling and pigeonholing, and I have to say that my party has suffered from a lot of this pigeonholing for a long time, largely wrong. Look, I've seen these comments as well, and all I'd say is that they were, at best clumsy and insensitive, but I'm probably going to echo Rupert's words as well.
Okay, the final candidate to answer the question is Jason.
Thank you very much. Of course, this is aimed at me. And when we talk about muckraking and going back over 6 years of Facebook page accounts, it shows how desperate some people are to muckrake. As I've already said previously, I deal with, on a daily basis, some of the most vulnerable people within our society. I deal on a regular basis and look after, in our community of St Ives, a large population of Polish people, a large Bangladeshi community, a large Pakistani community. And that has never stopped us having respect for each other. I think what you have to differentiate sometimes is a bit of pub-time humour between friends that isn't full of hate, that isn't meant in that return whatsoever, and actually take the politics out of this and think about what's going on instead.
Okay, Colin, you asked the question. Would you like to come back on that?
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on that? Yes, sir.
Well, I think these comments, I picked up on this a couple of days ago, but I was quite concerned that he was a public servant at the time, being paid by the public purse as a councillor. Your Facebook page went in the public domain, and yet he still made those comments. So your mindset is racist. How can you say it's a bit of banter between friends? I don't go between my friends and call travellers, bikers, etc. I refer to people, by their correct names in life. So you're a public servant who's being paid by the public purse, and yet when you comment on Facebook in the public domain, and you call it a bit of banter, where you won't be getting my vote.
Okay, Jason.
Thank you very much. Again, you can blur it out of all proportion if you actually like.
It's in black and white, though. It's very black and white.
But frankly,
It's not out of proportion with the travellers.
it's at the end of the day, whatever way you want to look at this, and if people have taken offence, then I'm truly sorry that is the case. But fundamentally, if you go into St Ives at the moment, you will see hundreds of boards up for my election. And if you knock on the door of those places, you will see Bangladeshis, you will see Polish people, and you will see the Pakistani community coming out en masse to support me, because they know what I've done for them in their local communities. It is as simple as that.
Okay, one question. Debbie at the back, I believe, for those who won't know, is actually Jason's agent, correct?
Yes. I would just like to actually correct something there. This was not on Jason's public Facebook. Jason and another person who was involved in the comments. And if you read it, I think you'll realise that it was just light-hearted banter. Jason's and another person's Facebooks were actually private. It came from another member who was involved in the conversation, and it took digging back 6.5 years to find it.
Now, justify what Jason has said. You were not part of the time. You were not there at the time. You cannot justify his personal comments.
I can honestly say that I have called the Irish tinkers. Yeah? Because that's what they are commonly known as. It does not mean that I'm racist. Look, my stepson
You're not paid by the public purse. You are not paid by the public purse, woman. End of story. I'm being aggressive because the way that this is being covered up, it's racist.
It's not being covered up, it's
racist.
Okay, can we move on? Councillor Steve Turney.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say how despicable it is, actually, to hear members representing here to support the Labour candidate, given what's currently going on in Labour and that horrible anti-Semitic scandal. Yeah. It's just horrible.
Yes,
to be calling someone else, they should be ashamed of themselves.
He's here to justify himself. He's here to ask for our vote in an election. We're entitled to ask
Sir, you are all haters.
Okay, sorry, I can't differentiate between people who ask questions, so if you could just go back to your seat, we'll hear from you, from your seat. No, if you go back to the seat, I can't, everybody else will want to come up and use the microphone, so they'll hear you. You've got the next question, and then we'll wrap it up with some, any feedback. So, right, we'll wait and hear what you have to say, sir, please.
Well, on Facebook, I'm part of the Wisbech discussion forum, and you hear a few times about someone mentioning a black person walking across the road. In the comments, a woman would say, why would you need to mention a black person? Turns out that lady wasn't racist at all, but she did mention black. What I'm trying to get at is, just because you mention certain things over social media does not make you racist.
When you're paid by the public purse, you have to adhere to standards. You have the standards to adhere to.
Okay, let's let me just, very quick, sorry, we've got plenty of time, so let me just explain something that happened to me today, which is quite relevant to this. I had a really angry phone call at 5:30 tonight from somebody, because our paper today had referred to the fact that the murder in Wisbech during the week involved an English couple, and he wanted to know why, most angrily, why I'd used the term English in that story when I hadn't ever used it before and don't normally mention a nationality. And he was very heated, gentleman from Wisbech, and I explained to him the reason why we'd used the word English was because on social media, which is a dangerous, horrible place to go unless you're well organised and prepared, and be warned about it if you haven't gone there. It's a dark place. Can be nice if you're talking to friends in Australia, but if you're talking to people in Wisbech, it could be a really dark place, or March, or Chatterer, so be warned. And I explained to this person on the phone tonight that the reason why I referred to him as English, because when the story broke at the beginning of the week, everybody jumped to the conclusion as to the nationality of the people that were involved. And it was like, it was a grotesque walk through the darkest place you'd want to go. And I decided unilaterally, as the editor of a local paper, to mention as English to quell that nonsense. And it did. It doesn't make the tragedy any less sad. It doesn't interfere with the police investigation, but it did tell the community something that they were jumping to the conclusions and get involved in Chinese whispers that were unnecessary and wrong. And that's why I did it. Okay. I'll take two more questions.
It's more a comment than a question at the moment. I'd just like to say that saying anything of a racist nature, whether it is banter or serious, whether it is in private or public, it's still racist.
Mike. Okay, we'll come back to this one in a minute. We'll come back to this one. Yes.
First of all, I'd just like to remind the Chair, if you don't mind, that this is your forum and I would rather you didn't join in. And secondly, I would like to remind all the candidates and their agents, if it's necessary, that there is no such thing as private Facebook pages, and public servants particularly need to be particularly careful.
I'm simply being reprimanded. Bob, your next question.
Yeah, my question is very different. It's already been covered by one of the candidates, but before I ask it, I just want to preface it by saying I'm independent, I'm not a member of any political party, and therefore the question I'm about to ask is not planted by the candidate who has already given the answer. In fact, I won't be voting for UKIP, just to make it clear. And the question is this. I agree with the UKIP candidate that the PCC is a full-time job. Will the other candidates, if elected, resign all other posts and jobs that they hold?
Question.
Yes.
This might be a very short round compared to the previous one. I've definitely committed. My employers are expecting that if I'm elected, they will lose my services. I have no other employment, and I will have no other
Does
employment.
that include your council position?
I have no other positions.
I thought you were on the county council.
Not anymore. Not since I moved.
Well, Nick's already told us he's early retired out of work, so let's hear what he has to say.
Yes, this tan comes from the golf course. That's what I do these days, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I've always been a local councillor and worked full time. I like and love representing my local area, and I will continue to do so, but only as a backbench local councillor. All my other positions were already resigned as the chairman of the Police and Crime Panel, chairman for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, as the East of England chairman of the Local Government Association, and on the national board. I will resign next week anyway, and as leader of the council, it is coming up to the AGM on Friday. Yeah, Friday straight up to the election in any case. And I've already made that indication that we're stepping down as well.
Are you content?
Up to the point. I think all four answers are an improvement on the current Conservative PCC, who spends a lot of time outside of the job. Don't know how many times he's come to Wisbech, but he certainly didn't come before the election. So this is a huge improvement on the last election, that all four candidates are here. But I would say to the Conservative candidate, I genuinely don't believe to be a good PCC, you either have the time to be a local councillor or handle the conflict of interest that will arise by being a local councillor and the PCC.
Alan, no, you wanted to say something.
I want to anchor a rumour about Mr. Ablewhite. Would he please confirm, if genuine or not, that he had a company that went into liquidation and still owes money? That's all I ask.
Sorry, I thought we were on the other question, but we'll move on. We'll start with you, Jason.
I don't think it's actually relevant. I did have a company in 2009 when the... Okay, that's fine.
Is that all your views? Seems to be. We'll move on to the next. Sorry?
I would like to hear some more on the answer to that question.
Okay, right. All those who would like Jason to answer that question, please indicate. Those who prefer we moved on, please indicate. We move on. Mike, you had a question.
Yeah. Can you explain why the position of Police and Crime Commissioner should be aligned to a national, not necessarily national, to a political party?
Okay, the question, if you didn't have, was why should a Police and Crime Commissioner be aligned to a political party? Let's go to Labour first.
Thanks. No, it doesn't have to be, but it is. Currently in this arena, we are all members of a political party. I think there's an enormous advantage for people with that, because this position is all but autonomous. When you get appointed commissioner, you get voted by the people, you're elected into office. Now, there is no check and balance. There is a police committee, but that doesn't have hardly any authority over the Police and Crime Commission. Government are hard-pressed to hold police and crime commissioners to account, but political parties will. So if you know that there is at least somebody who will be ringing me up when I become police and crime commissioner and I start to do something that people find a little bit outrageous, then you know that there will be people knocking on my door saying, Dave, you need to be a bit thinking about this. In the same way, one of my checks and balances is going to be my deputy, who I've already said who I'm going to appoint as my deputy. That is out there in the public domain, so when I go into the ballot box, effectively, I take my deputy with me. I've chosen somebody who's an entirely different person to me, different character, different experience, so another check and balance for me. So,
if any of us are elected, when we're elected, one of the first things we have to do before we can start the job is take the oath of impartiality, which requires the PCC to do the job without favouring anyone, people, groups, political parties even. So the role is not political in that respect. However, you notice that we all stand here with an emblem of some sort or another next to our name. That actually, as well as what Dave said about making sure that when we are in office, the party at least is being on our shoulders and saying, oi, that's a bit stupid, stop it at once. More importantly, when you vote for us, you know roughly what you're going to get. If you have somebody who stands up here saying, they are independent, you'll know if they've been working in your community for years, you'll know who they are, what they stand for. But in an election of 600,000, most of the people voting will never have met the candidate on the ballot paper. It's just the way it is. So you have to have some other way of getting an idea of what you're going to get when you vote. So you know roughly from the labels we've been given what you're going to get in the way of approach to certain things, ideology, political beliefs. For me, before I became a Lib Dem candidate, I had to sit in an exam for an hour, I had to go through a series of interviews to make sure that A, I could do the job and not cause the party difficulty, and B, that I was able to carry the brand, as it were, the Lib Dem, the bird of liberty. Those things mean that when you do vote for me, if you do, you know, as well as the things you see on my political material during the campaign, what I say here, what I've said elsewhere, you know what other things you can assume will be the truth about me. So that does help.
Councillors sitting exams, that's a nice one. Nick.
Thank you. I happen to disagree with both the previous speakers. I think this post really should be apolitical, if the truth be known. The problem is that it's the only election that is county-wide, and if you obviously include Peterborough in that, that's a huge geographic area. The barriers of standing are huge. First of all, you've got to put up £5,000, which I had to do myself, but you have to get 100 people to sign your nomination forms. And to be truthful, I don't think I know 100 people that would sign a political document like a nomination form. So you're almost forced into being with a party. Now, I'm not forced to be UKIP, but those that should and could have stood as independents, I think have been dissuaded by the whole way this has been set up. So what I've chosen to do, and we're the only party that doesn't have a whip, so that there's nobody within UKIP, if I'm elected, that can tell me what to do, and those that know me would probably understand that they wouldn't get away with it, and Steve's laughing at the back behind. So on my website, where I've posted my manifesto and where it's showing, UKIP is mentioned, but it's 99% about me, not about the party. I think that's exactly what this role should be about.
For me, I've been a proud Conservative for many, many years, and I wear my colours on my sleeve during election time. Anybody that knows me is once the election is over, that's it. You're doing your bit for the residents. And we try, wherever we can, to keep party politics on the back burner and do our best. And that is the way that I will do this role if elected. As I've already said, I work cross-party. I have a great working relationship with Lewis Herbert, who's the Labour leader of Cambridgeshire City, because it's the right thing to do, and we've had this discussion, it's the right thing to do, and what we're doing for our residents first and foremost. So it's cutting away those political barriers once you're elected. In terms of why it's political, it's because it's the way it's set up, frankly, and at this election there are no independent candidates. You know, we all stand on a party ticket, but frankly, you know, this is about residents first and our local communities.